Anytime we're talking about grieving, we're talking make sense of our story. And grieving happens, I talked about, cyclically and iteratively, and there are different facets of it and that kind of thing. So all of that happens in what I'm going to call kind of a funneling framework. Kind of think of an hourglass where it starts in a real broad way and then it narrows and then stuff happens in the middle and then it widens back out, okay? So I'm going to walk through each of these stages, if you will. I don't know what else to call it at the moment. Layers of funnel, I don't know. We're going with stages, okay? So our starting point, find some of the markers here. Our starting point on this whole conversation is normally when there's impact from disclosure and discovery, all of that stuff happens. A lot of times that place it starts up here. Everything is tainted and everything is lost. It's like this place is, I'm going to call scorched earth. And a lot of wives start there. A lot of husbands start there too, frankly. They go, I don't know how this is not all lost. I don't know how this will ever be recovered, that kind of thing. But a lot of wives especially start with scorched earth. All you can see as a wife is that everything is tainted. Everything is broken. The person that stands in front of you that you married is broken, and the situation is broken, and it just feels for so many wives in those first days of disclosure and discovery that, like, what do I even do with this? How does this, all of the shattered, broken pieces laying in front, how does this get put back together? How do we sweep all of that up and throw it in the garbage can and start something new? Because I don't know how to do that either. And so it feels like a sense of scorched earth, okay? A couple things are important in this place. A wife has to be there. A wife has to have permission. And I don't mean permission like, I allow it, honey. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, like, she has to have the space, the container, the people speaking into her life, be that me, us, you as a husband, the pastor and her support group and her sister, have to create a container that has space for her to feel her way through everything is lost. It's scorched earth. If people early in the process are going, well, it's not all bad, and there are some good things that are salvageable here and that kind of thing. If she doesn't have space to feel her way through the scorched earth, it'll hijack the whole process. Okay? And I've had well-meaning pastors before say, look, you got to hold on to something. You got to hold on to, she's got to be able to see something positive. There's got to be some silver lining for her to hang on to hope. Why? Like, her hope is in Jesus. If you make her find a silver lining, if you make her find something to hold on to, something positive to look at, you're in some way invalidating the totality of her experience. You're shortchanging her experience of loss. And well-meaning as it is, and we don't want her to feel the depths of that pain, and we want to pull her out and give her some kind of floor so she doesn't keep bottoming out. And like, all of that is good, and it's not a bad motive. But for a wife to walk through the process in a really deep, profound, and ultimately healing way, she has to have the space to go there. Okay? So for some wives, man, my Chipotle was apparently had bad Chipotle today. For some wives, their husbands are consistently from day one going, it's not all lost, it's not all bad, it's not all. You gotta see don't do that. Give her space to be there, okay? Which also means, as part two, as a husband, she has to see you, the person, because what we're talking about here is both the person, that's you, and the overall situation. She has to be able to see both the situation and you as the person in that totality of scorched earth. And so this is, again, where it's really hard for a lot of husbands, is they'll go, okay, I get that she feels like everything is a loss and all 26 years are a hoax and everything's a waste. But I'm not the monster she's making out of. There were good days. You got to give me, some of y'all have heard me make light of this. It's like, it's all scorched earth, it's all lost, it's all broken. But you got to give me, back in '82, we had a trip to Disney with the family and it was a good time. You got to give me that, right? And we'll try to like make her find this little window that was good. And then in ourselves, we'll go, look, I'm not all the monster you're painting out to be. I was still at least a financial provider. I was still at least I don't know what, fill in the blank, a hard worker, a good to-do lister, a good honeydewer, a good bowler, I don't know what it was. We try to find something to go, hey, I'm not scorched earth. It's scorched earth, but I'm not. You got to give her permission to be there. You got to allow space for her to see it in the totality. Ultimately, where we're going, multiple layers down the funnel, we're going to move past that, and I'll explain that in a minute. But on the front end especially, and don't miss this, on the front end especially, and whenever there's new things that come into the picture to grieve, there's a new piece of disclosure. There's a new angle or twist on the affair that you had. There's a new revelation about when you watched pornography. Whatever the thing was, when there's a new piece of information, a lot of times it walks back through this. The initial place is, this is all for naught. This is all broken. It just takes wives back to that first place. And there's got to be space for that. All right, I'm off that soapbox, moving to the next one. Kind of stage 2, if you will. Everything is tainted, but everything isn't lost. So kind of that next place that a wife moves to is that everything is impacted and tainted by this. Like nothing is unscathed. And wives pretty quickly will come to that place of realization of like, this affected my health, this affected my self-esteem, this affected our kids, this affected our finances, it affected our friends, it affected our faith, it affected you, it affected our marriage, it affected my parents, it affected the car you drive and the house that we live in. And she kind of conceptualizes like, this isn't just reserved for one little area of our life. She starts to see the totality of it and where all of the tentacles of this went into. And that's also part of why we want you, and a lot of y'all in the process have written your timeline as a part of your disclosure process. Because for a lot of guys, the timeline helps them start to flesh out in the earliest ways, start to flesh out and see where all the tentacles of this started to go into, okay? But what she'll start to realize is everything's tainted, everything's impacted, but not everything is lost. It's not entirely scorched earth. Like there's a couple little shoots of things sticking up that didn't get completely eradicated. And that's important because what she's starting to do is like conceptualize in her grieving. She's starting to conceptualize like what a more honest reality is. Some wives, once they hit this first place where everything is scorched earth, they'll quickly scramble within themselves to try to find the positives. It's not external influence, it's internal influence. But she's trying to do that in order to like take the edge off of the pain. This place is more of it like an honest recognition. It's not feverish, it's not anxious. It's more of like a settling that happens in her gut and like in her soul where she sees clearly like what this really is. And so points of note here. There's still, in this place, there's still catastrophe. There's still catastrophe. Like, there's still the language of all is lost. There's still the language of you're a monster and you'll never change and everything about you I hate. And like that stuff can still be in there. It's still catastrophic at this point. It's not, again, this doesn't apply for every wife and every home. Y'all understand? It's not like we're finding the silver lining. It's that we're just seeing clearly that, boy, if this were a fire, everything is smoke colored and smoke smelling, but some things didn't actually completely burn to the ground, okay? No silver linings as a husband. This is still not the time to go, yeah, but can't you see? Yeah, but I'm not all, this is not the time. Not because it's not true. I wish I could convince some of y'all of this. Like some husbands, you're going, but the way she says it and the way she obviously feels about it is that it is true to her. I am in totality a monster. This is in totality broken, blah, blah, blah. It's not. It's not like that. At the end of the day, it's not like that. In the middle of the day, it feels that way to her. And she has to have space to be there, okay? But this place is still catastrophic usually, okay? The other thing that husbands will do when a wife moves into this place is somewhere she'll accidentally or sometimes intentionally voice that. You know, it'll be over dinner and she'll say something to the effect of, I just can't believe X, Y, and Z, but I feel like our daughter is okay. You know, I feel like I know she's affected, but I know she's okay. And the husband will latch onto that. He'll chime in with some like, yeah, she's great. She's just like you and strong and courageous and she's going to be fantastic and so are you. And it just just takes all the air out and just don't do that. Okay. Moving to the next place. It's not wrong that you want that and you want to say that and you want her to see that and see that you see that. It's not wrong. But again, in that space, it's just not appropriate in that space. Okay. Next, we're moving down. Everything's impacted, but not necessarily tainted. Not only can she see that there's some shoots that are still there in that didn't get burned to the ground, but they're actually not tainted. A wife can start to see, and I'm going to flip this part right here around for a husband in just a second. A wife can start to see that, okay, you know what? Some pieces, some facets of this, not only are they not burned to the ground, but they also don't smell like smoke and fire. They're okay. They're okay. And I don't know what those pieces are. They're unique to everyone's house. It may be something with your mother-in-law. It may be something with your finances. It may be something with one of your kids. I don't know who it is or what it is or where it is. But wives start to see, there are pieces here that, you know what? It's impacted, but it's not tainted. It's not tainted. I'm going to flip this over because for some husbands, when they hit this place, when they realize and really conceptualize this truth that some facets of our life aren't actually tainted, some husbands will take that to mean that we're moving out of grief and that we're moving on in the process. And you don't want to do that either because you'll get too far ahead and it'll feel like she's the problem stuck back there. You don't want to get out there. So the realization that some things aren't completely tainted. They're impacted, not completely tainted, doesn't mean we're onward and upward. It's more of sober reality that you want to internalize. That's good. And it doesn't mean anything for where we're headed. It just is what it is. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Keep it going. Try not to belabor the point. This is all true, by the way. Everything is tainted but isn't lost. This is true of the person. I don't know where to put this, but this is true of the person and the situation. Right? This is true of both. This is true of both. And this is true of both. Everything isn't a contributor. Some things weren't impacted. This is true of both the situation and the person. A wife can start to see, everything about him isn't broken and wrong. There's actually a really good man in there. I don't know what those pieces of him are at the moment exactly, and I'm not interested in labeling them, but I can see that everything about his personhood isn't a contributor. Everything about his upbringing isn't a contributor. Everything about his fill in the blank isn't a contributor. And some things genuinely weren't impacted. Not only are they not tainted, but they weren't impacted. You can start to see these things in a different light. And for a lot of wives, this place starts to bring a little bit of hope until the next iteration of the next facet, the next thing happens, and then it feels like it eradicates the hope briefly. But there's a space right about here. We're not to that middle place yet, but there's a space right about here where it's like a wife kind of goes, okay, there's a possibility that this can change. The pieces, maybe they can be put back together, or maybe they can be swept off and a new thing built. But there's something here. There's something in him, and there's something for us. and like there's something. And that's a really sweet place for a lot of wives to hit. It's a scary place for a lot of wives to hit, no doubt. But it's also a really sweet place. All right. And again, if as a husband, she starts to talk about something there and you take that and run with it. Yeah, you know, I mean, here's one of the most common things I hear, right, in our Christian subculture and folks that are well-meaning and church-going. Right about here, when a wife expresses some of this stuff, a husband will go, you know what, we're going to help other people one day. And it's like, boom, tap the brakes. You know, for most wives, they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, this is, whoop, you just, nuh-uh. Like, don't go there. You just went 56 steps down the road. Like, come on back. That's not where we are. We don't even know if this is going to get fixed. We don't even know if you can change. We don't know if I can change, if we can change. We don't know. I'm just saying, maybe there's a possibility. A wife can start to see that in this place. Right? So again, as a husband, you don't want to run off with that. Okay? Then a wife moves into neutral, what I would call neutral, which is like she soberly, intentionally, and very clearly sees the reality that is before her. This is the reality of my life. It is not all lost. It is not all broken. It is not all tainted. Some things weren't impacted by this, and it's hard. It could go either way. Most wives in this place are genuinely open-handed to their husband's work. She's genuinely open-handed, meaning like she's willing to receive whatever you're willing to give in that place. She's willing to see progress. She's willing to hear your heart. She's not entirely like, you can't turn into, now I get to take out my aggression and frustration towards you. We're not there, okay? But she's willing to hear some of your hard emotional stuff. She's, wife at that point is open-handed going, I'm open. Most wives, when they make this, if they've been thinking about divorce, most wives, when they sort of make this transition, go to a place where they say, I don't know if I need to divorce. I'm not sure if I want a divorce. Actually, I don't think I do. And I know that God hasn't released me. Usually that's some of the language that's coming in right here. She's not camped on either of those, but they're a possibility. Redemption is a possibility, and so is divorce. And there's this middle space that's very, wives usually right here, there's not a ton of anger anymore. There's more sadness. I use that word sober because that's a really good word to me, not in the context of drunk, but in the context of like, she's plainly engaged with what's going on in front of her. She sees clearly. Most wives in that place, whenever the acting in stuff is happening, she sees it. She's like, yeah, that's what that is. When she feels herself going behind the garage door, putting the wall up, she knows it and calls it. She sees what that is. When she's moving this way away from you because she needs space and boundaries, like she knows what that is. When she sees you moving away because she knows what that is. Like she's seeing clearly. The anger usually is dying down here, especially if there's some kind of slip, like there is an acting in episode, or there is some kind of hiding or a lie that comes out that's not like, it's not the kind of lie that like, yes, I've been in the middle of another affair and it's nuclear. It's a lie on a smaller scale, if that makes sense. I don't want to minimize that. I hope everybody's tracking. But it's a lie on a lesser consequential thing, if you will. That's dicey, but y'all understand. But something like that happens here. She usually isn't losing her mind and just like, most wives that are in this space right here aren't going back to scorched earth. When something happens that's a slip or a fumble in some way on a husband's part, she's not going back to scorched earth. She's usually going back up to here, like, man, everything's impacted, but maybe not everything's tainted. Like maybe this is salvageable. She goes back up there, but usually the anger in there, the sadness hits for sure. And this is also a space for a lot of bargaining. All right, so remember in our stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, hopelessness, acceptance, resolution, those are kind of one and the same. And then I would add redemption. Stages of grief, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, give her credit. Denial, anger, bargaining, hopelessness, acceptance, or resolution, and then redemption. This is, I can't believe this is my life, all the way over to God is making good on the brokenness, okay? Redeeming it for good. All right, everybody's with me there. The bargaining is this middle ground right here. This is a review for some of y'all. The bargaining is the middle ground. It takes the edge off the anger, and it also kind of staves off the hopelessness, although allows in some of the sadness. In this place where there's neutral, there's usually a lot of bargaining. A wife is making sense of, you know, I can stay if, I'll work through this if he doesn't do that. I can maybe handle if he does this, but I'm not going to stay if he does that. You know, I'll make it through this. Okay, I can see where maybe this is salvageable, and I can hang on until the kids leave the house. That's only a few more years. I think I can work through to there, right? Or bargaining with God. A wife, you know, will go, okay, God, like, I'm leaving this empty. I want to divorce. I think I want out of this marriage, but it's 3 years or 6 years or 36 years in the making, and I know you haven't released me. And so if you're calling me to stay in this, I'll stay, but you're going to have to really do some work on him. And there's a bargaining that happens. Sometimes wives will bargain with their husband. They'll literally say to him, like, hey, I'm willing to walk through this, but I'm going to need this from you. And if you do this, then I'll do that. And there's this like give and take that isn't bad or wrong. It's just usually bargaining as a part of this grief process. And that's all in that neutral space. Okay? Reminder. It's iterative and cyclical. So just because a wife is here doesn't mean that she's not going to go back up there for a little while. Okay, soapbox, right? Sometimes I'm standing here in front of y'all and I'm like, man, I just don't want to sound like I'm heavy-handed, like beating you down and that kind of thing. I don't want it to come across that way. And so I'm trying to be careful about some of the stuff I'm saying and how I'm saying it. For a lot of husbands, as a wife is working through all this stuff, the conversation that comes up is him going, but look, it's not all me. Somewhere she's got stuff in this too. And listen, newsflash. Every wife knows that. She knows there's stuff, whether it's from her childhood or from last week. She knows. It's just not time for that. It's not time for her stuff. And I can promise you as a husband, the more you camp on what about her stuff, the more you are handicapping yourself. I promise you, you are slowing you down, which means you're going to slow y'all down, okay? So that's kind of like number one. So number two there is she still has to have permission. Just because we've gotten down into here and you've heard her say, you know, it's not all lost. I can see our daughter is going to be okay. Actually, she doesn't seem like she was really impacted. You know what? Thank you that you didn't use our money on your acting out and our family finances are actually okay. Like she says something like that. There's credit where credit is due kind of thing, right? All that happened. A lot of husbands, though, where they go mentally is like, okay, so because we hit that place, we're not going back up to this place where it's all my fault again. But you got to allow that. You got to have, I don't know what word to put on it other than just like the humility to say, today her ice cream cone is melting too fast and it's my fault. No, it's not your fault. It's 111 degrees. It's God's fault. I don't know. It's not your fault. But today, can you let it be? Can you have the humility? Not even that you have to say, hey, I know your ice cream melting is my fault. But when she says it feels like it's your fault, do you have to correct her today? Let it be scorched earth. Let her be pissed off that they didn't have butter pecan brickle ice cream. I don't know. Mint chocolate chip. That's how I like to roll. I'm also dairy free, which means it's really hard to find really good mint chocolate chip ice cream that doesn't have dairy. But I don't remember what I was saying. You gotta have permission. You gotta have permission is what I was trying to say. Yeah, no, you don't have to stand up and say everything that's wrong in the world, in your world, is my fault today. You don't have to say that. But do you have to correct her when she says that? Can you just practice the humility that says, on some level, if I had lived the way I should have lived and God was calling me to be the husband that I should have been, maybe today wouldn't be so hard while your ice cream was melting. You see what I'm saying? So just because she gets here doesn't mean we're not going to go back up here for a little while. It's okay. I know it doesn't feel okay, but it's okay. She didn't want to go back there either, just FYI. It's not like she wants to camp up there in scorched earth. But, yeah, okay. So then we start to transition. And the transition for most wives is super scary. It is vulnerable. It feels like she just landed and somebody dropped her in the deep end and she's not even sure how to swim. Sometimes it feels effortless and like she's out in the deep end doing the backstroke and it's just beautiful. And sometimes she's just doggy paddling for her life. It's scary when the transition happens. Because on some level, as this transition happens, she's giving a part of her heart and herself back to you to stomp on again. She's giving a part of her, and she knows she's going to get hurt again. She's just praying that it's not hurt like that again. And that it's super scary in there. It is like, I know wives who, when they transition into this next place, when they kind of move from here to here, that acceptance that some things might always be tainted. That's kind of like what I would say is the first place as the transition happens. It's like a wife comes to know, you know what, that piece is broken and it might just always be. It just might always be broken. That thing in our lives, that part of your character, that thing about you, that thing in me, that just may be broken from here on out. And she comes to accept that and allow herself to accept that. It is so vulnerable to make that transition. And that piece goes hand in hand with this piece. The realization that some things were good. You know what? Your odd, awkward, random sense of humor that she fell in love with but came to hate because you used it against her, and she always felt like the butt of your jokes. Now she goes, it's actually kind of cute again. It's kind of funny when he makes his awkward jokes. I'm not talking awkward like sexual and all that stuff. It's just you have a witty sense of humor and you're funny a lot of times. And now she can laugh at some of your jokes again because she knows she's not the butt of them. And in fact, nobody's the butt of them. They're just silly and lighthearted. And she loves that about you. And she can actually allow herself to love that about you again. And it's scary. Because if she loves that about you, you might use that to get other people to love that about you, and now you're back in another affair. Yeah. Because if she allows herself to love that about you, and you take it away from her, it'll feel like rejection all over again. Because if she allows herself to feel that and appreciate your sense of humor again, that means that like she might start to feel other things for you, and she doesn't know if she wants to feel those yet. And listen, there are some wives listening who are like, yeah, I do. I want all of that back. Can we just get on with it? And she can't force it to come fast enough. That's true too for some wives. But a lot of wives, it's actually like a reluctant meeting out, letting out parts of themselves to you. And the more safe you are, the more you handle those with care and fragility and white glove, like honor, and the more you have that tenderness and empathy around those things, the more that comes and the more that she'll allow to come and more of herself that she will give you, okay? Caution in this place. The acknowledgement that some things actually were good. I can't tell you how many how many husbands in that place, their reaction or response whenever a wife like vulnerably shares some of that or acknowledges something, their response is, I told you so. I'm begging you. I'm begging you, don't do that. She says, I really do. Y'all are in the car ride home after being at a cocktail party, and she goes, vulnerably and tenderly, she goes, you are funny, actually. And the joke that you cracked about lemons, so it was really funny. And then you kind of go, told you so. I've always been funny. That's why you fell in love with me. And it's like this snarky, smug, sometimes you were just trying to be funny and cute, but it wasn't. And sometimes it's just arrogant, and it's like she gave you a special, valuable gift, and you went, I already have 2 of those. Thanks. Put it on the shelf with all the rest. Don't do that. Don't say I told you so. Right? If she comes back, be honored that she's bringing something like that back. She says to you, hey, you know what? I saw you with our son today, and I love, you were a good dad today. And then in your head, you're like, last week you were telling me I was a bad dad for all of our marriage, and now you like, you want to run that tape back? Sometimes you'll even say it, right? Like, so does this mean I wasn't a bad dad all the other time? Because when she was in scorched earth last week, she was saying, you've been a terrible dad all your life. I don't know if that's what she was saying or that's what you heard that she was saying. I don't know what it is. But we'll want to run that back and sort of redact history. Don't do that. Just let it be the gift it is in the moment. Just let it be the gift in the moment. Take it in. Acknowledge it. Embrace it. And know that tomorrow the narrative may change. Tomorrow evening, it'll be landed at the same thing, right? Like, it's only in the moment, okay? So, acceptance that some things might always be this way moves into like a reality that some things were actually good. And those are kind of intertwined. They kind of tangle up a little bit. And then move from there down into acceptance that some things needed to be lost. Whew. This is really like sacred space, is what I'll call it for a lot of wives. It's like she kind of goes to a place where she goes, you know, that piece of our relationship, it actually was dysfunctional. It actually wasn't God honoring. It's the dance that we did, it's the dance that we knew, but it wasn't a good dance. And this thing blowing up actually brought to light that was a wrong dance, and that needed to go. And here again, caution. Husbands in that place will go something to the effect of, yeah, see, God's already redeeming what I've done. Don't do that. You'll cut the legs right out from under her in that moment. There's an acceptance and a realization that some things weren't good. And most wives in that place are settling into the acceptance of that and the grief of that. They're settling into the acknowledgement of that. It's not a high five. It's not like let's celebrate that God used your infidelity to shine the light on our dysfunction. No, that's not what we're doing. We're not throwing a party on that at this point. But this place is like it's almost like, I'm overselling it a little bit, okay? A lot of wives in this place will say something like, I'm finding myself again. Wives will say that in different places, right? But it's very common right here where a wife will say something like, because she's acknowledging, she sees that there is good. Everything isn't lost. There actually are things that she does love about you. And not everything's broken in y'all's relationship. And she sees that there are some things that really needed to go. And it's like, after 20 years, I'm making this up, right? After 20 years of living in y'all's dysfunction, on the heels of your betrayal and infidelity and all the character junk and acting in that goes with that, and how she tried to counter to your step, and it became this awkward, wonky dance, and now it's like wives will say, I'm finding myself again. Like, I actually remember who I am again. There are parts of me that I lost that I actually remember I like about me. And that can range from like character things to the way that she thinks, to the way that she experiences emotion, to her spiritual life, to crocheting. I don't know. She finds herself again. And this is beautiful for a lot of wives And also for a lot of husbands, this is really scary because we think we're going to get back the person that we lost from 20 years ago or last year or whatever it was. It's like we have a frame where we have this archetype in our mind of who we're going to get back. But on the other side of recovery, she starts, I say the other side, I mean like in the process on the other side, right? She starts to find parts of herself that she likes. She starts to find an identity because, y'all know I hate talking about codependency. Some wives just are codependent, and they have been for 20 years. And some husbands are too. It's not an indictment on wives. But she starts to get like decoupled from that codependency and finding her own voice and identity and figure out who she is apart from being your wife. Especially for some of y'all, you're a pastor's wife, and that's all you've been known as is the pastor's wife. Nobody calls you by your name and knows you and your identity. And now you're finally finding yourself apart from that as part of y'all's recovery process, and a lot of husbands get scared, like, oh no, what if she actually decides that she likes who she's becoming and who she's becoming doesn't want to be with me? And then they'll start to clamp down. Then our own codependency stuff starts to kick in. We start to clamp down or we'll push and reject because we'll reject before we're rejected because those are old habits and coping mechanisms that we used to do. And it gets all wonky again. And just like we started up here, she has to have space to find herself in that. She has to have, some of y'all, what'll happen is she'll say, you know what, I'm going to do a girls' weekend with some friends of mine, and you'll go online and start researching everything, trying to you'll look at Google Maps, figure out where the hotel is, what's around it, and how far away it is, and and you'll do it under the banner of, I just care and concern, I want to make sure she gets there safely and gets home safely. But what you're really doing is calming your anxiety because you don't know how to be okay when she's got a life that doesn't involve you. And that's a really good place. It's a really good place. I can tell you in the last 15 years, I can think of literally one scenario, where a wife did that, and what happened was that she actually found herself. I would submit that she didn't truly find herself. She just reconnected to a part of her that she lost when she was 16, and she started to be a 40-year-old woman that acted like a 16-year-old. And she decided, I don't want this life, I don't want this marriage, I don't want these kids, I want completely out of my life. And she ripcorded completely out. Completely out. Gave up custody, the whole 9 yards. Okay, so one in I don't know how many people over the last 15 years where a wife realized, you know what, I want something completely different and it definitely doesn't include you. Most of the time, actually, it's really healthy. It's an individuation that occurs where a wife finds herself in parts of herself that were lost years ago, sometimes that she never even had a chance to find because of her upbringing. And it's actually her moving more into the fullness of who God is calling her to be in the context of y'all's relationship. And that's good. That's good. Okay? All right. Belaboring the point, finishing up. Kind of like that final space, if you will, is moving into what I'll say is like the recognition that in God's sovereignty, His sovereignty is prevailing or has prevailed on some things, but is in process on other things. And it's God's sovereignty prevailing on for the redemption of those things that were tainted and broken and lost. There moves into a place where you start to see not only was it not tainted, not only was it not broken, not only was it good, or yes, it was all of those things, but now the good things God is enhancing and taking and like flourishing, and the broken things, some of them God is actually using for redemption. Because as a mom, you're seeing that it's changed the way you interact with your adult daughter. And you just talk to her in a different way and you'll have a different connection. And it came out of this. It's the good that God brought from so much bad and pain. It's the same thing for a dad with a son. It's the way that you're engaging someone as a neighbor, as a ministry. I don't know what it is, but you start to see those things, right? Again, the tendency for a husband here is to get carried away with like, it's Care Bears and rainbows and onward and upward and leave no space to cycle back again. Because truth is, she'll probably cycle back again. There'll be a new facet. It might be 9.5 years from now, but there'll be another facet. Only 9.5 years from now, what took 4.5 years to walk through, I'm making that up, will take 4.5 hours to walk through. There'll be a day when it takes 4.5 minutes to walk through. There'll be a day where some wives, it's still going to happen, and it'll take 4.5 seconds for them to walk through. Because there's so much healing. But we'll never get to the place where it takes 4.5 seconds if we can't be in a place where we're going to allow it to take 4.5 years. I'm speaking to husbands on that. Okay? So conceptually, globally, kind of works like this.